Director with the Office of Victim Services. If we could start by people as I see them on the screen. Beth?
Hi there, I'm Beth Hamilton from the Connecticut Alliance to End Sexual Violence.
Natasha?
Okay, hello. I'm Natasha, the State Victim Advocate.
Nice to see you, Natasha.
Hi,
Sarah?
Good afternoon, Sarah Moriarty from the Department of Public Health, Office of Injury and Violence Prevention. How is everybody?
Great, nice to see you, Sarah. Thank you. Sevi?
Hi, Sevi Papakanakis, Deputy Director of Forensic Biology and DNA at the State Forensic Lab.
Nice to see you, Sevi. Robin?
Hi, this is Robin Towsey Ayers, Department of Public Health, Office of Injury and Violence Prevention.
Great, thanks, Robin. Karen?
Karen Jubanik, Yale New Haven Hospital, emergency medicine physician.
Good afternoon, Karen. Anne?
Good afternoon, Wyndham State's Attorney for the Division of Criminal Justice.
Great to see you, Anne. Rachel?
Hi, everyone. Rachel Henderson, Safe Response Program Manager for OVS.
Thanks, Rachel. Kim?
Hi, Kim McKinnon, the Safe Training Program Manager.
Heather?
Hi, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Heather Deming from the Connecticut Emergency Nurses Association.
Great, thanks, Heather. And then we have a judicial meetings guest.
Yeah, for the recording, it should be Michael Schneider.
Recording. Great, yep. Thank you. And we also have Janet Mantello with us, Administrative Assistant with the SAFE program. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I'd like to start with approval of the February 19th, 2025 minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to review those? And were there any suggestions for revision or edit? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes from February 19th?
Motion
Made
to
the
accept.
motion.
Apologize. Who was that?
I was one of them, so I could be the second or the first.
Same.
Heather, the motion to accept. Beth, a second. Thank you both very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
And so moving to the third item on the agenda, update from the Safe Response Program Manager. Rachel, I turn that over to you.
Hi, everyone. We've had a busy month. I'm going to let Kim cover a lot of what we've been doing. But for the response program, we just finished our spring training class. And so we're going to be adding 9 additional safes. Currently, we are up to a total of 42 members. We are still precepting a large amount and working through that, but we're seeing an improvement in our response rates, and we hope to continue that trend. So a lot of great feedback, a lot of initiative. I can't thank the contractors that do the work enough. They are all amazing additions and really the heart of the program. So thank you to them, and I'll leave it off to Kim. I don't have too much else to say today.
All right, so Rachel mentioned that we finished the SAFE class last week, and a total of 26 nurses finished the program, so we were happy about that. We're also actively running our annual competency day trainings, which the safes that work and provide care within the hospitals have to come to in order to maintain their SAFE certificate. Traditionally, we've hosted them only during the summer months, and this year we started something new. We started hosting them on a monthly basis, and the feedback from the nurses has been really, really positive. So I'm happy we started to do that. I also reported out in our last meeting that we were looking for opportunities to host our fall training in the southern portion of the state to try to mitigate some of the logistical challenges that nurses have traveling to the Wethersfield office, and also to increase access in that area. And we're really excited. We received a lot of interest from hospital facilities to partner with us to host the training. And Rachel and I have been busy going out touring some of the facilities. And right now, we're kind of looking at what the facilities have to offer and looking at the needs of our program. And we're excited to be working on this project and hope to be able to determine which healthcare facility we're going to be partnering with soon. So I think that's all I had on my list.
Natasha, I see you at your hand up.
Yes. You said there was nine new, and I missed what? Was it new nurses or new partners?
9 new safes to the program. So the 9 brought us up from 33 to 42.
And when you say safes, you mean people that participate in the program?
Organizations. I mean, we run the Safe Response program. So currently that program responds to 8 health centers and UConn Student Health Services. So the contractors that are a part of that response program, their numbers are up to 42. There are a lot more safes that are trained within the state. I'm sorry,
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Natasha.
Did anyone have any other questions, thoughts, or comments regarding anything that Rachel or Kim shared on response or training?
This is Robin from DPH. I'm just wondering, are all the people who you are training actually executing the SAFE program?
Robin, I think if I understand, the question is those that come through the SAFE training that we hold twice a year, are all of those that come through the program healthcare providers that then join the response program? Was that the question?
Yes. Can you not hear me? Yeah. Yep.
So no, the training class is open to those who wish to join the Safe Response program, as well as healthcare providers across the state, to build capacity in all facilities to be able to respond to patients who present with sexual assault. So we consistently hope for a percentage of the class to be healthcare providers that will be joining the response program. And we consistently have a number of those students that do choose to join the response program, but the class itself is open to healthcare providers across the state.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering, you always wonder,
of course,
what happens to the people you train.
Of course. Other thoughts or questions for either Kim or Rachel?
Mary, is there a way to track how many people are quote unquote safes in the state?
We do have a list of those that have maintained their competency, and that will be part of our discussion this afternoon, a continuing discussion around the avenues to maintain competency. And so when a healthcare provider is trained, at the end of that class, if they successfully complete both the didactic and the clinical portion, they are a trained safe within Connecticut. And then there are certain requirements to maintain that status as a safe. And that includes the annual competency training that either Kim or Rachel mentioned in their report. That's held throughout the year now to provide opportunity for everyone who is trained as a safe to come back through the annual competency day training and maintain that designation as a trained safe within Connecticut. So part of our discussion this afternoon will be around potential alternative pathways to maintain that that designation as a trained safe within Connecticut. So thank you for that question, Anne. Natasha, did you have an additional question? I think perhaps her. Okay, great. And I just want to add, Rachel and Kim provided a very short summary of the things that they have been doing, but the two of them have been working nonstop with the most recent completion of the training class. What goes into the successful presentation of the material that is required to move through the SAFE program is really an incredible feat. And they have just come through the most recent class and have been working on completing the clinicals for that class, as well as conducting the annual competency days, while seeking to expand access to the training class by working with healthcare partners to explore the opportunities. So although the two of them provided a very concise summary, they have been very busy with managing, maintaining, and seeking to expand the SAFE program. So with that, we would move into the discharge packet. Robin, did you have anything that we could provide as an update on the packet?
Sure. Actually, we did the final review edit, and it's with our marketing firm Converge, Julie Johnson, who some of you may have met. So it's in the final stages, finally. One of the things that kind of held us back were checking all the websites and phone numbers and names of things, because as we know, since the beginning of the year, some things have changed. So that kind of set us back a little bit, but it's on its final version.
That's great, Robin. Thank you. Do you have any sort of potential date for when that might be available?
No, we need to meet with Converge. That's the marketing company working with us, just to quickly go through. There were only maybe a dozen small corrections that needed to be made. I'm hoping that by the end of the month, we'll have that completed.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks for that update, Robin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yep. It's been a long time coming.
It's a critical resource, and we're very appreciative of all of the work that has been put into the development of that. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you to everybody, because between Sarah and I, we've been in contact with a lot of people about this.
Thank you both. Sarah, thank you. With that, we will move to the 6th agenda item, which is an update on the sexual assault evidence collection kit and the revision for the technical guidelines. The award has been made to CERSHI, which is our current provider of the sexual assault evidence collection kit. So they will continue to be our vendor for the kit. There are revisions that were approved through the commission, a transition from a blood draw, a standard blood draw, to a finger stick for obtaining a blood sample. So those revisions have been approved and are moving forward as the new version of the kit that will be implemented. While that is happening, there also is some potential legislation that has been introduced around the capacity for a victim to make a third designation around how they would like to move forward with the kit. So there is currently an option for the victim to remain anonymous and to not have the kit tested, or for a victim to report and to have the kit tested. The proposed legislation provides for a third option, which is to have that kit marked as identified, which would include the name of the victim. The kit would be tested with the goal of providing additional information to a victim who may then feel more informed as to how they would like to move forward with that. And certainly I welcome additional thoughts from I know so many of us are involved in different committees and commissions and working groups around these topics. So please, anyone, feel free to add additional detail, or certainly correct anything that I did not articulate as it should be. But with that legislation, that causes us to pause on moving forward the final revisions for the kit to CERSHI for production, because we need to make any revisions that we would need to the kit box, to the kit consent form, so that we have all of that together as a package. The next step as far as the production of a revised kit is to have all of that information provided to CERSHI so that they can develop a sample kit, which then would be reviewed and approved, or any requests for revisions or edits made, so that we had a final approved kit, which then would be moved back to CERSHI for production. And then while that is occurring, once we have once we know what we have as far as potential legislative revisions, we can then also incorporate those into the technical guidelines so that all of those pieces can come together. And it's a number of moving pieces, attempting to try to have all of them come together to also allow for what will be a required robust training period, so that all who are connected to the utilization of the kit are aware of the changes that will be part of this process. So that is a summary of all of those pieces. And again, I welcome others' thoughts, input, additional detail that are part of this, or any questions that anyone has about that. Well, certainly if anyone does have questions throughout the meeting, don't hesitate to raise them or to email me separately if you think of questions following the meeting. With that, we would move to item 7 on our agenda, which is exploring maintaining a SAFE certificate. And again, I provided a little bit of context for that in response to Anne's question. Again, thank you, Anne, for that question. Rachel has done a more concise version of a PowerPoint that was shared at a previous meeting, sort of as a recap of the topic, to give us a kind of a mutual starting point for conversation today. And so I would turn it over to Rachel to kind of provide us with that presentation, and then we can move into the discussion on that. Thanks very much, Rachel.
Thank you, Mary. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And everybody can see that. All right, and then just Kim, please let me know if they're not changing over, because sometimes I think it's hard to tell.
Let me know.
All
when
right.
you switch. Yep, it moved.
There we go. All right, so when the vision of the Connecticut Judicial Branch and the mission of OVS is applied to the SAFE program, it makes sense that our overarching goal should be to have a safe, trained healthcare provider available for every patient who reports sexual assault throughout the state. That's really the only way that will ensure all patients are provided trauma-informed, evidence-based care that addresses their unique medical legal needs. And it was identified for us that a first step in making that a reality is increasing drastically what we talked about before, the number of safes in Connecticut. And although our efforts have been fruitful with Kim and I increasing the number of class sizes, we do feel that there is an untapped resource with identifying some of the safes that we talked about, of how we're going to recruit and retain these safe, trained healthcare providers. So the SAFE program has trained almost 550 healthcare providers, now more like 580 as a SAFE over the past 14 years. And as of this December, I do apologize, this number says 165, but I think we're up to 206 from the increased number. And I'm sorry, the next slide as well. So although we've trained 550, we can see that still 206, there is not, we are losing quite a bit. So what happened to more than 60% of the providers that received the SAFE training? And that's really what we're looking at. And the proposal was that a lot of them are still out there working as SAFEs, because that is perfectly within the scope of practice of a nurse, but may not be current on all their training as we identified previously. So this is a flow diagram representing our current pathway to competency. As you can see, it's a singular path. This initial part where you have, and again, if it's really small, Kim, please let me know because on my screen it's huge. The hospital sponsored.
Looks okay.
Thank you. The hospital sponsored applicant to the clinical training. This is the 6 weeks course that comprises 64 hours of clinical and didactic training. So you can see that the continuation can really, it's a lot to go through to have to recertify. So if you do not maintain that annual competency day requirement, if you fall off currently, the only pathway is to go through the course again. So we gave a couple of examples of background scenarios to try and put this into context in what we have heard from some of our SAFEs within the state. So in scenario 1, a hospital-based SAFE took 40-hour clinical didactic training approved by the IFN in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 2018, performed multiple exams, and then after she was not considered a SAFE, she elected to take the CT SAFE program course in spring 2021, accredited to the same standards as the Bridgeport course. She completed the program. She attended a refresher in 2022, missed in 2023 due to surgery in the summer months, and then attended annual competency in 2024. Currently, under this model, she's not considered a SAFE in CT. In scenario 2, a response program SAFE completes the entirety of the SAFE training, decides not to remain with the program, as they do not have a hospital-based job where exams can be performed. They are not able to care for patients and have not performed any exams. They attend annual competency day every year since their training, and currently they are considered a SAFE in CT. So, any thoughts or questions on the backgrounds or situation? Go ahead, Ann.
I don't know if this is either one of the, I read in one of the copies that I have, example 2, then after legislation passed in 2019, she was not considered a SAFE. And I was wondering why, and is there a way that we could grandfather those people in? Because
that's a great question. That's a great question. So one of the things is that currently the only way someone's considered trained in Connecticut is if they come through the SAFE program that we do at OVS, the 40-hour IFN accredited course. Prior to that, there were other facilities that had utilized the 40-hour online IFN accredited didactic portion of the course. Now, we're not saying that in its entirety equates to what we do up here at OVS. We do feel like there's additional steps in training that needs to be done, but there is a lot of information that's contained within that program. So that's exactly what you're suggesting, is that this alternatives to pathway would then incorporate some of that training that this person had and give them credit for what they did know. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we're identifying these opportunities where people may have additional training or knowledge that we can integrate into pathways to certification.
And I think you have something in the paperwork that you've done. It looks like a lot of research went into this. It's really good, the materials that you gave us about whether or not if somebody came from another state, if we would recognize them, because it seems a shame to have to start it all over again. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so we're not the only state that's looking at this. So New Hampshire and other states have identified that there needs to be a reevaluation of the standards set. So we're not alone in this evaluation. These are challenges that are faced by other states throughout the country. Recruitment and retention is always kind of a hot ticket item as far as our discussion questions go. But yes, exactly.
Do we fix this with legislation, or how do we avoid this in the future? Do we put something into the legislation that says somebody can be grandfathered in if within the first 6 months they meet additional
So
criteria?
actually, this isn't even, I don't
Well, I have
feel,
a
and
question that's kind of
sorry,
related before you
Natasha.
get that far.
Sure, go ahead, Natasha. Sorry, my apologies.
Who decides? Okay, so is the pathway legislated, or do you have the authority to define the pathway? No.
So to answer your question, those are excellent, and I love where your mind's going with this. So it's 100% not in statute that defines what the credentials are. This committee, the Safe Advisory Committee, makes recommendations based on research and discussion and whatnot as the experts for this. So this is why this proposal is really just a draft. It's to plant a seed. It's to identify if other professionals in this multidisciplinary team can also see there might be an advantage, but also to point out pitfalls if something is not being identified, so that we can really have this robust kind of change that may allow to bridge some of those gaps that Anne had mentioned and that you were saying. But really, it's about us coming up with this group, I should say, coming up with a plan, a proposal, identifying if it's valid. We have a couple suggestions to that as well, and then moving it on to the director and then to the chief court administrator to then be validated as what our process would be. And that is how the statute reads, is that we must have a universal process within Connecticut. Currently, that process is that singular pathway. We would like to expand that process to allow for more opportunities for recognition of the education experience and training that other people have achieved. Thanks. These are great questions. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate just the interaction and the back and forth. It really makes it a lot, makes me feel like we're moving in the right direction. Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? All right. So again, just a summary. So the summary of the issue: limited options for maintaining competency are hindering recruitment and retention of safe, trained healthcare providers throughout the state. No consideration for current clinical practice or continuing education is included. Competency is fixed on that singular attendance to the annual competency day. And that's really what we want to try and expand. Not take it away, just make it more broad. So these are some of the recommendations, some of the considerations that we talked about that might be key items to consider when we're saying what other things may add to a person's competency as a safe in Connecticut. So safe practice related CEUs, so forensic nursing conferences, any sort of science-based nursing related, I shouldn't say nursing, healthcare provider related education. Advanced certification was a suggestion as well. That's where we talk about SANE A as the IFN certifies for adult and adolescent. And then also when we put in advanced certification or advanced degrees, are we talking about, is there a different standard for doctors, APRNs, DOs, PAs, all those advanced practitioners, clinical nurse midwives, things like that. So we want to see if that's some of that where they may be already skilled in areas that other providers are not, or other licensed healthcare providers are not, if there should be a change for that as well. Active clinical practice. Are they doing this work in their primary hospital as well? There should be some credit given to those nurses that are, I keep saying nurses, but healthcare providers that are providing this service as in their primary job and taking that into consideration. And then other approved didactic and clinical enrichment. So other things like maybe getting an advanced degree, non-specific to healthcare, things like that, that may be applicable, social work and whatnot. And then additionally, the last kind of piece is that initial training and proof of competency standards. So this is when we talk about what Anne had mentioned before about bringing in providers from other states. And we're saying we want every person to be to the Connecticut standards when they come in. The pathway to get that or the pathway to maintain that may be a little variable, but then maintenance also has options. So a little bit layered, but I really think it's important to differentiate what the initial training is and proof of competency versus maintenance of competency, because I think that those are important things to differentiate too. Natasha, do I see your hand up again? All right.
No, I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. No worries.
Let me figure out how to turn it off.
We kind of need an easy pass for nurses, for safes, right? And in the IFA, do they have a differentiation between the standards and a SANE A and a SANE B or whatever, based upon what your medical job is? Or is it the same standard? So if they don't have a different standard, I don't see why we would need to have a different standard for that. And if we could make it like an easy pass, right? The concept that, especially starting with the New England states or the tri-state area nurses and doctors and staff, if everybody can agree, because I looked at your chart about, it seemed like maybe we need to expand more. You have 3 states, right? You've got Maine, New Hampshire, and New York. They have a recognized standard. Well, Maine and New Hampshire. Am I jumping ahead of your slides? Should I stop?
No, I actually wasn't. So, Anne, I appreciate that you looked over those specifics. We weren't really going to go into the comparisons with other states because I did feel like
you go back to your slides.
That's okay. Only because I think, and I always say this, it may be something along the lines of, oh, what kind of vehicle do you drive? Oh, well, I drive a motorcycle. Well, I drive, 18-wheeler. Like, the states are very different in some of what their practice is like, but a lot of the education standards are very similar. So it can vary greatly from state to state. And you can see where we're in a unique position in Connecticut because our standards are like kind of first tier. So we have the ability to absorb people into our state more easily than some of the other states have the ability to absorb us into theirs. They have a little bit more of an expanded practice with certain things. So we are in a unique position in that sense, if that makes sense. Okay. So for this, it's a lot of kind of information. I don't want to go too much into the weeds on this. But basically what we're talking about is this is the initial training and proof of competency standards. So for the first application or the first intake into our SAFE training program or to the state, and again, I visualize this in an application form similar to other states, when they are coming into the initial training, where do they fall? And so identifying these different tiers, this is an important point to kind of identify, are there any conflicts within these tiers? So feedback when a fresh eye is looking at this to identify if there is any discrepancy in each of the tiers, where if you would get somebody, you'd feel like they could potentially fall into 2 categories. And that's really important because we want to eliminate those things. We want to make sure that the 4 tiers are exclusive to those specific categories, so it's not confusing when a person comes in, or there's not necessarily too much discretion in where they would fall. So I think those are important things that we're kind of looking for feedback on with that as well. So I'm not going to go over too much of those tiers, but just know that those are 4 tiers with those details. And then this is where we talk about, okay, we've identified whatever training you need to bring you up to CT standards. So we've gotten past that initial training, whatever they need, they're considered at this time a CT safe. Whatever their background is, it's kind of, we're already moved past this point. What do they need to do from year to year to maintain this safe certificate? And what we're asking for really on this analysis part is really, is this reasonable? are these standards reasonable? Are they evidence-based? Is there any comparison to this in relation to other states? And this is where we did a little bit of the research to try and see what these standards would maintain. And we did model ourselves a lot after Maine and New Hampshire with some of the different requirements that they just so clearly published. So I think that this falls within that range, but I would be curious if someone felt that it was too much. So those are different things. And then we identified, you know, the SANE A, where you're having this international certification where you have to maintain clinical practice, you have to maintain continuing education over the course of 4 years. So there's a lot of requirements. We're lessening those so that there's no redundancy for the individual to have to maintain 2 certifications. So I think that's really important. And then bolstering that clinically inactive SAFE to really make sure that they're getting what they need to feel competent were they to choose or were they to get you know, change their profession to be clinical, they would feel confident that their SAFE certification or their SAFE credentialing is valid and that they could perform the tasks required of the position. And then this is the diagram, the flow diagram. And again, I can see how it's very complicated. You know, it's kind of got a lot of moving parts, but the beauty of this is that there are many ways to get to the end. There's many ways to come back. And it is very inclusive of whatever potential training someone might have outside of the state and allows for a standardized evaluation of that individual, this unbiased kind of identification of, is it, you know, an IFN certified training course? That's one of the standards that we've agreed upon. Since our course is IFN standards, we have those educational guidelines. We know that anyone with a certification or certificate of completion for that course has been trained to those same educational standards, no matter where they are in the country. So I think that's really important to mention. And then this is the maintenance. So again, 2 complicated diagrams. You can see they're kind of like looped light switches where you're able to get to each area a little bit more, but I really do feel that the differentiation between earning your SAFE certificate as a CT SAFE and then maintaining that certificate are 2 different pathways. So we're never coming back to the other side when it comes to the SAFE certificate. That is the point where we can kind of find different ways through, if it makes sense. Does any, oh, Mary, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I think what was helpful for me when I was looking at this is the arrow that's on the bottom of the screen here, that this is representative of a 3-year period from the last day of the month from clinical completion. That was really the point that helped me to appreciate this. Our current requirement is that a SAFE attend 1 annual competency day each year within the 3-year period. And that is the only pathway to maintain competency currently. So in one of those scenarios, it was noted that the practitioner missed one of those annual competency opportunities due to a medical situation. And so because they had missed that annual competency day training, they were now not considered a SAFE in Connecticut because they hadn't had 3 consecutive annual competency day trainings within that 3-year period. And so that arrow on the bottom of this slide here was just really helpful to me in understanding that what is being presented is opportunities to maintain that competency during a 3-year period. So there are more opportunities with different qualifications that would allow someone to maintain that competency during that 3-year period. So if someone wasn't able to attend 1 annual competency day, there are other avenues that they could pursue to maintain that competency. So I just wanted to point that out because that was very helpful to me. And thank you for all of the material that you provided, Rachel.
Thank you.
I want to agree with Mary on that. I didn't understand any of this until you sent this, put this last chart up here. It doesn't make sense to me that you would have to do an annual training. Most professions don't have to do that. They have to do some kind of CEUs, something like that. So I like the way you're doing it now, and it makes much more sense now. Thanks. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
It allows for more people to maintain their standard, and we want to have more people available to do these exams throughout the state and not restrict it so much that we end up with people doing the kits that don't have any background or are reading them as we go. So this is a great idea. And if I heard you correctly earlier, when the legislation passed, it passed the standard requirement to a certain group. So as long as this group agrees to make these changes and that gets run up the flagpole and approved, then those changes can take place without having to have legislation. And the only thing is, it's too bad it didn't get caught in the passage of the legislation that people would need to be grandfathered in order to make that standardization not be an obstacle, but simply a review.
The other thing it does is it rewards the people that are doing the work already. So they might not have to do that one-day training if they've been doing if they've been actively the clinical practice line. I don't know what that really means, but I think, you reward them, and if they're self-educating themselves, they've done that. So that's a good thing about this model too.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. I really do think that we're missing one more step though, before just to get the buy-in of this group. Although I appreciate all the different perspectives, I really feel like we had reached out to our SAFE trained staff to gather feedback on what they thought of this model. So we did a small kind of test group. One of the things we found is that there was very little response back, mostly because they're already dedicated professionals that do QA and do all these things. And so they gave a lot of great perspective, but I do feel like it's very important that we might be missing a factor somewhere along the lines. If we could potentially reach out to the SAFEs that are actually on those 2 annual competency day lists. So the SAFEs that are contained within the annual competency day list, and then the ones that had fallen off from the previous year, because I do think it's important to not only let them know that we're thinking of them, but really seeing like how many potential people could this change affect? Like if this were to be an option, how many SAFEs could we potentially have this increase our number that are now going to be needed to be monitored and things like this? So it could create this influx of work, which Kim and I, we're ready to handle, but I really feel like it's one of those things that we want to be more prepared about what our numbers look like before we implement the change, really. And then the people on the ground doing the work are going to be able to identify some of maybe the little nuances that are going to affect them, or the health systems that are going to be affected by this if they're having to maintain the people that are on their staff by filling out this application every year. So I think there is a shift of the burden to some of the different organizations that, I would appreciate the feedback from. So I do feel like I love that everyone's kind of seems to be in consensus that it has some great potential, but I really do feel like the next step for us is just to gather a little bit more information about how this would impact the SAFEs within the facilities and kind of go in that direction. Karen?
I'd be very curious as to whether or not it shows a geographic differentiation between obstacles, because if you have 50 people in say the greater Hartford area that are SAFEs, and only 4 out in Eastern Connecticut, these clinically inactive might become a bigger problem out in my region where I work than in the greater Hartford region. So I'm very curious as to how that would impact, and also if when you're surveying the groups that you want, groups you just talked about, if they have any other suggestions as to what are obstacles and and any solutions that they've thought about too. You're right. Maybe we don't have the entire world, but you guys did a lot of work to get this information, and it looks good.
Thanks, Ann. Karen?
Yeah, so my only a question that I would want to make sure we had the answer to is that, if there are alternative pathways, would anybody want to do the annual training anymore? And the other thing then, the subtext would be, should the cases go to court, would the defense side try to poke holes in their training by saying that, well, there used to be this sort of continued certification, and these people, this person here who's testifying in court took an easier way out. So it would be important to know if other states have some lessons learned about this, because I wouldn't want our patients to suffer, even though, of course, we know that the SANEs or SAFEs would be able to do it, with whatever we decide to do, but we don't want the legal cases to suffer potentially, and I'll let our lawyers speak to that.
Right. I'm sure a defense attorney would bring that up. But the cases will generally not hinge on the training of a nurse, and beating up a nurse, I don't think would look good in front of a jury. There might be a reason to bring it up, but basically the prosecutor would have to find some good analogy, because it's that the people have more training than if you went to a hospital where nobody was trained in the kit. And it would take, I would think, double the amount of time for them to go through the kit, because they'd be reading the steps as they were doing them. And we could be more certain that people who've gone through the training, even if they're not clinically active, are aware of what the concerns would be with regard to, say, contamination and how items are to be placed and to change gloves. So I'm sure there will be a defense attorney who will raise that. I'm also sure, pretty confident that isn't going to be the critical issue in a case. I think if you've been watching any of the national trials that are going on, evidence collection can be attacked even amongst police officers. So, and it's rightly attacked if things are not handled correctly. But I think people would rather have someone who went through a training, even if it took place years before, because we've all had training. It's been years since I've been in law school, but it doesn't mean that I wasn't trained as a lawyer. And we have CLEs, and people who are in these healthcare fields have continuing education requirements, maybe not with specific to this, but it doesn't mean that they've unlearned what they knew. They just may not have the most recent updates with the most recent technology.
Yeah, Rachel, yeah, that makes sense. Rachel, do we have data for what other states have done that has been,
For the certifications?
Well, for the maintaining, for people who don't do the annual.
So I can resend it to you, Karen.
Okay.
I kind of did a chart. That was what Ann had been reading from.
Okay.
What we were seeing is that a lot of the states, especially New Hampshire, and I talked to Janet Carroll directly, was kind of, they were looking at their hourly requirement because they were finding that it was difficult to maintain their safes that were certified because their CEU requirement was so high, right? So that's why it's very important to kind of look at, that's where we looked at, like, is there some overlap? Like, we don't need to take ACLS twice for two different facilities. If we're taking those same courses, can they be, that still counts towards that. So I think that that's what we were looking at, is how can we eliminate the redundancy, which is why we considered SANE, because if they're already doing that international certification, that standard is so high that we would like to make sure that they are just staying current on the state of Connecticut standards or best practice in our state, whatever that looks like, for changes with the lab and other things that they may not do other places. So totally valid. And I think that we can visit that more. Again, I think it's an entire conversation unto itself once we get that feedback from the SAFEs that are doing the work too. Thank you. All right. I think that's it. So
Rachel, thank you for that that great presentation and for the additional detailed explanation that's so helpful in understanding these pieces. And I very much appreciate the questions around how do we be best prepared to be able to still articulate the training that the SAFEs have received and the methods by which they have maintained that competency. So that's why that chart on that last page is so helpful, because it provides what that combination could be as to how we do that. So it's not that we're eliminating the requirement to maintain competency, it's that we are seeking to find different combinations of ways that we can articulate that competency is being achieved and maintained consistently. So this conversation was very helpful to that end. And as Rachel mentioned, we intend to reach out to the SAFEs who are currently have a certificate as a SAFE, and those that have recently not been able to maintain that certificate, and to get that information about what are they finding as the challenges to competency, what do they see as areas that are most important in maintaining competency, and folding that into the conversation as well. And we certainly welcome additional thoughts, feedback, questions as we move through this process, and we look forward to having that additional feedback from current SAFEs who have that certificate, those that have recently not maintained that certificate, and also professional partners, as Rachel mentioned. We really think that obtaining all of that feedback is going to help us to identify different combinations that will help us to have those different options for the capacity to maintain competency within the program. And we would like to have the next meeting in person. We think that if we had all of that information, it could come together for a discussion about all of that. And I know we had one meeting in person this year, and we think it really helps to build community and communication amongst the committee. So we would like to propose that the next meeting, which is currently scheduled for August 13th, be an in-person meeting here at the Office of Victim Services. So we will send that out as an option and ask for feedback from folks to see if that is something that we could accommodate for our next meeting, again on August 13th. Other pieces that you wanted to share as a wrap up, Rachel, around the SAFE certificate?
No, I think that's it. It was a lot of information. So I think everybody, if anyone has any needs for information, please reach out. But I believe everything was shared. So thank you.
Mary, I have two quick things. One is,
of course,
do we think the DPH discharge pamphlet is going to have to change if the legislation passes about the 3 options?
That's a good question I hadn't considered.
I guess maybe if you can get me a copy of what their final one looks like, and then I'll bring that to the other group so we can just take a check. It may not change at all, but I'm just concerned about that. And the other thing is, as you know, I'll be retired as of July 1st. So the next meeting, August 13th, I'll let Chief Griffin know, but if you all can remind him so that he can decide who he's going to send in person.
And let me ask, is Robin still on the call? Robin, if you are, is it possible to share the current draft, recognizing it's not finalized?
Rachel's shaking her head no. I think I just missed Robin.
Okay.
Yeah, she just
Robin.
signed off.
Okay, I'll reach out to Robin and ask if we can have a draft, the most current draft, to review that to see if that's a concern. And congratulations on your upcoming retirements. I will add to that I also have made the decision to retire as of July 1st. So Rachel will be interim chair for the SAFE committee while our office goes through the process of identifying a new director. So I will also not be at the August 13th in-person meeting, but am so appreciative of the work of everyone on this committee and the expertise that you have brought to all of the conversations here. I have learned so much from all of you, and I'm so grateful for that, and have such great confidence in the future of the committee and of the SAFE program. So I just want to extend my thanks to all of you for the work that you have done here together with us on this committee. So thank you all.
Congratulations to you, Mary, on your retirement. You've done an outstanding job, and you've brought in Kim and Rachel who are doing terrific work, and you will be missed.
Thank you, Ann. Same to you.
Well, the same to both of you. I mean, I think I've worked with you my whole time working here since 2000. I mean, I wasn't here for too all the time. Thank you. You both have been strong advocates for women. From when I started at PCSW, definitely strong advocates on sex assault, DV. So you will be missed.
Thank you, Natasha.
Always that fine line of congratulations and jealousy that I feel when somebody announces their retirement. So that's where I am in the moment, because I was ready for Ann, but I wasn't ready for Mary. So now I'm feeling double.
Wow, I was the opposite. I knew Mary was doing it. I didn't know Ann was.
But at least I'll still see you both in June, I think, for one last commission meeting. So I can really wish you the final goodbye. But yeah, best wishes to you both. And you've both done so much in your time for us. So hate to lose good people.
Yeah. But
thank you, Mary.
Enjoy your retirement. You definitely have earned it.
Thank you. Well, we will send out the announcement for the 13th as an in-person, and just ask for everyone's feedback to see if we can accommodate that. And then we'll let the group know whether or not we were able to have that shift to an in-person or not. And thank you again, everyone, for all of your hard work. Much appreciated.